So here's the deal. There are many discussions that we can be having as fans about the Vancouver Canucks. They're a pretty interesting hockey team at this stage of the NHL campaign. But, with that said, there are a number of stories that I do think probably take precedent over the others. And in this video, what I wanted to do was dive into just some of the new ones that have popped up over the past few days, especially considering the hot news out of the Vegas Golden Knights organization and their coaching staff. But before we dive into that, I wanted to bring up a conversation on Canucks superstar, supposedly, Elias Pettersson. Because while it's true we can have our conversations about trades and where it is most appropriate he would get moved to, which teams would be most interested, and what could he go for, there was a stat posted by Satyar Shah the other day on Twitter that I think illuminates something more than meets the eye with this guy. Take a look at what Sat posted earlier 2 days ago. Elias Pettersson had 15 goals and 30 assists in 64 games last season. Elias Pettersson has 15 goals and 30 assists in 64 games this season. And I know what you might be thinking. Wait a minute. Pettersson's season last year was bad. He wasn't productive. He was playing on a team that had playoff aspirations, and he did not do his part in helping the team accomplish those playoff aspirations. His lack of production was one of the biggest talking points for Vancouver Canucks fans throughout the course of last summer, whether or not he'd be able to improve, whether or not he'd be able to come back, if the 100-point PD still exists somewhere in that frame. That was going to be one of the biggest question marks heading into the next few years, right? Why is it that we can look at this guy and say, hey, he's doing the same thing this year? Does that not mean that the guy hasn't improved? And at first glance, you might actually be right about that. But here's the thing. The Vancouver Canucks last year, they had playoff aspirations, yes. And you could even say this year they had playoff aspirations too. But it cannot go without saying that the Vancouver Canucks this year were so shambolically out of nowhere, just totally in a different realm compared to where they were last year quality-wise. The Canucks absolutely sucked this year, and you cannot go out there and disagree with that idea. They've been so bad. The quality of the players around every part of the lineup has declined. The goaltenders, they can't save a beach ball this season. The defense, you've got young, inexperienced guys coming in here and doing their work, and they actually look fine, but they're not great, which is okay. Again, they're developing. And then the forwards, I mean, there might not be a 20-goal scorer on Vancouver this year. It's that bad. This team is so much worse than they were last year. For one, you have Quinn Hughes, one of the most bona fide game changers in the National Hockey League today, straight up quit on the Vancouver Canucks and decide to leave the team at this stage. He was out, 1 foot out the door for months, it seemed. And that guy, hate to say it, but he makes the Canucks a better team. Him not being there provides ample challenges for the guys that are remaining, which include Elias Pettersson. Make no mistake about it, it doesn't seem good at all to see that for Pettersson, after having a bad year last year, he is at literally the same point production this year by comparison. But you do have to acknowledge the context. This team is so much worse than they were last year, yet Pettersson's production is still the same. Now, look at me making excuses for Elias Pettersson, trying to justify that he actually has improved because the production is the same and the team is worse. I still do think that it's a reasonable thought process to have, but I will also say that this doesn't absolve Elias Pettersson from any sort of doubt or blame that Canucks fans can bestow upon him. I think it's very fair to say that, yeah, even though Pettersson might actually have produced better this season given the circumstances of the Canucks team as a whole, that doesn't excuse him and make him squeaky peachy clean in the zeitgeist that is Canucks conversation and discourse. This guy's always going to have those expectations. He's making the money that justifies those expectations. He's got to live up to it. He's not been able to do that in Vancouver. Plain and simple. I'm not going to disagree with that. But we got to at least give credit where credit is due, right? The team sucks, and Pettersson is still producing better and playing some of the best defensive hockey he has ever played. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that being defensively responsible is an antidote for no production, but still, baby steps. We mentioned this a few years ago, it seemed, but at this point, it is unproductive for Vancouver Canucks fans to have this thought in their minds that Pettersson is that $111.6 million caliber guy still. Like, what good does it do for us to stress about pro athletes that have no idea that we exist? Yes, you can be frustrated, but people are losing sleep over this like, hey, it's just sports. I understand sports are important, and they are an outlet for many of us, but at least acknowledge that Elias Pettersson is not as good as he could be. And we need to reshape the way that we think about this guy in order to have the most peaceful way at evaluating him in his game. Speaking about evaluations, there was another conversation that I wanted to have about the Vancouver Canucks, and it's all based on the coaching staff. You see, we talked about those younger guys, Yves Bouillon, Tom Willander, Elias Pettersson, Vittorio Mancini, all these guys who have gone out there onto the Canucks blue line and have made an impact. Even the guys up front, the Rossies, the Ogrins, the whomever else's. There's been a conversation on Canucks fandom about whether or not the Canucks should go out there and fire Adam Foote and hire Bruce Cassidy, who was recently cast aside out of the Vegas Golden Knights system. This was talked about on the Our Canucks subreddit, this was talked about on Twitter, all over. Hey, Vancouver, screw Foote, let's bring in Bruce Cassidy. Yeah, that's the guy. He's a Stanley Cup winning coach. And here's the thing I say about that. It's probably not a good idea. And it's not a good idea because Bruce Cassidy sucks as a coach, whatever. Like, I'm not going to necessarily say that. You could have your opinions as to whether or not that is true. But what I also think is the fact that Vancouver is in this rebuilding phase that doesn't really seem attractive for Stanley Cup potential head coaches out there. Bruce Cassidy was in Boston. There was an idea that said, okay, maybe they could go out there, win a championship, okay. He gets canned from there. Say what you want about whether or not the Bruins players were actually cognizant of what he was talking about and whether or not they actually liked him. But he goes to Vegas, he gets a really stacked roster, he wins a cup, and that's his legacy. He's on a team that has such a high standard for winning that even though Vegas was in a playoff spot yesterday, they still are, he gets the can. They're like, no, screw it, you're not doing as well as you could be. We're going to get John Tortorella in here. We want to win the cup. We're doing this now. Like, Bruce Cassidy cannot be looking at potential head coaching options in the NHL and saying, yeah, Vancouver, I want to go there. He just went from 2 Stanley Cup challenging teams, and you're thinking that the guy's going to go to Vancouver? Hell no. No way. It's either Vancouver keeps Adam Foote or they just get Manny Malhotra. Either way, the coaching staff in Vancouver, I'd say, needs to prioritize the development of these young guys. We have questions as to whether or not Foote is actually capable of doing that, considering the deployment of guys like Nils Höglander, etc., etc. I do think that that's questionable, and it's fair to bring up concerns in that regard. But whether it is Foote, whether it is Manny Malhotra, I think these guys are probably the better equipped at the moment guys when it comes to being able to say that they have a plan for these younger dudes to come in and do their work. Adam Foote, defensive specialist, he can help out what Yves Bouillon and Tom Willander can be doing. Manny Malhotra has experience with developing a lot of these players, and to his credit, it's worked out with some guys like Linus Karlsson, Max Sasson. You can have that level of development up high. And both of these coaches are relatively inexperienced at the NHL level. That's okay. The Vancouver Canucks, if they get a guy like Bruce Cassidy, I would honestly think that that's sort of a win now kind of move. So with that said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Firstly, what are your thoughts on Elias Pettersson's point production? And secondly, how do you feel about the idea of Bruce Cassidy coming over to Vancouver? I'm saying it's probably not going to happen, nor do I think it's good, but you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.